In light of COVID-19, I wanted to at least give you the opportunity to have a plan B if you decide that you don't want to do the interviews in person, or if there is a shelter in place order and you are unable the interviews in person. So if you take a look at the first round interview schedule, it was a draft, and depending upon what you choose to do, this will become final pending any other changes regarding COVID-19. But right now you are scheduled for 1 hour interviews with candidates beginning at 8:15 on Monday, March 30th. We would meet at 8 o'clock here or virtually, just to cover some basics of how those interviews are going to unfold. Each candidate then has 1 hour, and there's about a 15-minute break between each candidate. We'll review those that day, but right now that's the schedule that is laid out there. One of the things that you'll want to consider is giving each candidate, if you choose to interview 6, you could interview 5. 7 is still okay, but that's also a lot. If you choose to do 6, this is just supposition that we have 6 interviews. You'll want to give them the choice to interview in person if you choose to meet here or wherever else, or if they would like to conduct their interview remotely. Can everybody hear me okay? Are we doing all right? We're good? Yeah. One thing that I will share with you, I know that a lot of school boards have trepidation when it comes to interviewing remotely. You can't see the person, you can't see body language as well, you can't shake hands, make eye contact, so on and so forth. MSBA's Executive Director, Kirk Schneiderwind, is on the selection committee for NSBA, the National School Board Association's selection of a new executive director. And over the weekend, they conducted 6 interviews, all virtually from remote sites around the country. And he shared with our executive search team that they went very well. He was very comfortable, and the search team for the National School Board Association was very comfortable with how those interviews occurred. So it does work. It can work very, very well. It's not the way that we're used to doing them. And yet it is an option that you could consider. And I do think you'll want to offer it to all of the candidates that you choose to interview. If they would like to come in person, should you still be doing this sort of gathering, or if they would prefer to chime in remotely. And we need to assure them that that will not count against them at all during their interview process, but giving them the option, I think, would be a good idea in today's climate. So with that schedule, it looks like this. I sent some information over last night regarding some potential scripts for the interview and for the deliberation. It's a lot to read. It's similar, really similar to how you would conduct yourselves as a board if you conducted all of these interviews in person, except you need to run a much tighter ship as far as facilitating these in order to save some time. So for instance, one of the biggest changes is that instead of doing the round robin, I think we talked about each board member asking a question in the same order each time. If you're conducting a remote interview, the chair asks all of those questions. That way you're not talking over each other, or you can't quite tell who's supposed to ask the next one. It just alleviates some potential chaos to have the chair ask each of those questions. And that's explained in this first interview as well. I'm not going to go through this, but it is very, very similar to what we would do if you hold every interview in person with every candidate. It's simply a little bit different protocol, and you can also offer that first explanation regarding the federal and state emergency declarations. Because you're taping these meetings and the interviews, you will be putting them online for people to watch at their convenience. I do think it's important to state those first 2 paragraphs as to why we're operating the way we're operating. So with that, knowing that you can't decide absolutely for certain what the next 6 days will bring, I just wanted to clarify for you the schedule, the options, and leave it up to the board to discuss what it is you think you'd like to proceed with, at least at this point in time, regarding that first round, Monday and Tuesday mornings.
Right. So does anyone have any preferences? I know we talked last week kind of about what our ideal would be, and we've talked about wanting to meet in person if entirely possible. However, if again, we don't have 2 board members present, how would we like to handle that, doing this again? Do we want to take it all virtual like this if we can't have all board members present, or open to thoughts from the board?
my question, and I put this in the group chat, was, do we have any concerns about conducting some of the interviews in person and some of them remote? I know that it's acceptable in either case, but my concern is that, at least in my own mind, it's much preferable to have the interview in person. And I think that there's opportunities to connect that you will not be able to get virtually. So if we have whatever, 5, 6 candidates, whatever the number is, and some portion of them are in person and some percentage, some portion are remote, do we set ourselves up for a unlevel playing field there?
Right, so I'll repeat that because I'm not sure if everyone could hear that for the TV anyway. The concern is, are we worried about if there are some candidates who meet remotely and some who meet in person? Is that not going to be a level playing field for all of the candidates? Do we want to have all of them in person or all of them remote to really make sure to kind of level that playing field, since there are different experiences that you have by having an in-person interview?
I would say we just don't know enough today to decide what the case is even going to be next week. I would concur with Scott that ideally we would be in person. I have been on interview panels for the school board where we've had, not for school board, but as a school board representative, where we've had people call in, as one or two of the candidates might. And I think we can all acknowledge that that feels different, but we can still have a good, robust conversation about them. I have the same position I had last week, which I agree with Scott. Ideally, we would meet in person, and we would meet in a setting like this where we're providing sufficient social distancing. If we cannot, and maybe we still have to do it at Zoom also, knowing that some people won't be able to be here. Or we need to be ready to do that, but I feel like we already took the action to be ready for that if we have to decide at the last minute. I think the question at hand would be how much time does Hastings Community TV need for setup, if that drives our decision. I also believe more likely than not, it's going to be taken out of our hands before then.
I guess I would think that looking at this, I'd rather see us have it in person, but I have this feeling that in 6 days, we're not going to have the option. And then it's like, my preference would be in person, even if we have to spread it out and try and conduct a meeting where we can actually see everybody and kind of see the interactions between folks. But my hunch is by next week, this is not going to be. And if we have to go with a video, that's the process of last resort.
All right, so what I'm hearing is that in the ideal scenario, we're still hoping to do this in person, and I would agree. I think that's a better experience, but we recognize that most likely will not even be able to happen. So we should probably start planning for what it would look like and how we would do all of these with everyone virtual, and how we could get Hastings TV to be able to stream those interviews. Okay.
I don't think we really answered my question though, which was, do we feel, now let's just assume for a minute that come next week, we will be in a position to do it either in person or virtually. I'm perfectly fine coming in. I'm perfectly fine doing it virtually. But do we have a problem, real or perceived, if we do some virtually and some in person? And I haven't heard anybody answer that one.
I don't believe that we do, Scott, in that if we're in that situation, and to Barb's point, we say, hey, you have the option of being in person. You also have the option of doing the other. then the question of the level playing field then falls to the candidate, I guess. But I think that we all know each other well enough to know that it won't matter either way to us.
And I think that per candidate, they know their playing field, and that, you know, under their circumstances, they might not be able to leave their house, but they still should be able to have an interview if necessary, or if they want it. You know, maybe they're under quarantine at home and can't leave the house, but that shouldn't default them for getting this job. And I think that we are all professionals, and we can just treat each interview the same, even though they're not in person with us. I think we can stop. Yeah, we did one online. The next one we can do in person. You know, we can kind of go back and forth. I think it'll be different. It's definitely different being at home and not being in the meeting, but I think we can definitely be professional and make each one work.
All right, so just to kind of go over that for people at home who don't hear that we are still having communications on the Zoom. Director Gergen brought up that he's still concerned if we do this in person, how do we handle if some of the candidates are meeting in person versus some of the candidates would like to interview over Zoom or the phone, however we determine we're doing that. And Director Beisel had also spoken up that she didn't see that as an issue, that we're still giving them the option to interview, and we're still trying to work through the process that everyone is kind of struggling with right now at this time, and that's how to make these virtual communications working. Oh, awesome. Okay, thanks. Okay, never mind, apparently you can hear people through Zoom, so that's awesome. All right, so does that seem like we have consensus then there? Okay.
I would agree. I think that, you know, I would prefer to have everything in person, but you know, it's going to be whatever in 6 days, and we have to kind of flow with that. I think that also realizing today's technology-driven society, there are a lot of instances that are a bigger number of instances where people are video conferencing when they're looking for a job. And I think, you know, we probably fall into that category because this is the way life is going to be, at least for the, you know, how we address what happens, we don't know, but we have to be able to be considerate to the individual who's being interviewed. But if there's an instance where they can be in person, I think that would be preferable. But if it doesn't work out that way, then we just look at, and I hear what Scott's saying, do we look at all of them as video conferencing, or do we go each way depending on what is workable? But this all might be decided in 6 days, and we won't have only one option. So that's all I've got to say on it right now.
So I want to assure you that if these are held in person next Monday and Tuesday, MSBA will be here in person as well. Then looking ahead to round 2, we will conclude the last interview around noon, 1 o'clock on Tuesday, at which point you will then narrow your field to your finalists, 2 or 3 people that you will interview on Thursday. This is a very short window between concluding your first interviews and beginning your next round. So I want to at least give a little thought to that Thursday schedule. The Thursday schedule that you have still says draft on it. And it's pretty ambitious because it involves the community tours and the building tours and some things that simply might not be feasible at this time next week, let alone a week from Thursday. I am making an assumption that the staff input forum and the community input forum are still items, however, that you want to, include on that day. If the building tours and community tours don't occur, finding the way to have the community involved and the staff involved are a given for that Thursday. And we've been talking to Becky and Kelsey about how that would occur and how that feedback could be collected shortly after each of those finalists interview. So we'll proceed with that plan. And should I then on this list take off things like building tours and community tours and redo this to reflect a new reality? Or do you want to still shoot for something this ambitious and wait and see what next week brings?
I just think that if we're being realistic, I think we need to modify it because I don't think that's operating out of a position of reality at all at this point.
Okay.
Before we lose sign up, do we want to approve the interview schedule for
All the round one stuff, including the questions at this point? Or not? Not yet.
If that is Sandy talking, she hasn't taken herself off mute and we can't hear her.
I asked if we should have an approval first of the schedule
For round one?
for round one.
Sure. Yep. Just that one.
I guess what I looked at that schedule was that the one that was, what date was that sent out?
Monday and Tuesday. Oh,
Oh,
this was sent out. Mhm.
but there was only one, there was no modification, right?
Correct. There's been no changes to this for probably 2 or 3 weeks or longer.
Okay,
This is a pretty simple one.
So your motion will have to reflect that.
so I moved to take that as the, process. I'm getting feedback.
I am too.
Yep. What is occurring is that you have multiple people in the room with their microphones live at the same time. So we're getting
Oh,
a triple echo. So if we can get it down to one person having the microphone on, then that'll go away. I know it's a pain in the butt. If you don't, I've got a cute little button here on my setup that I, can click on and off real quick. But otherwise, for a keyboard shortcut, it's Alt-A, I think, in Zoom to
okay.
either mute or unmute yourself.
Okay, I'll try it again. I moved that we followed that schedule that was laid out 2 or 3 weeks ago. I don't know if anybody had an opinion about that one way or the other.
Yeah, I second that.
Okay,
Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Let's visit the schedule for round 2, just tentatively for a week from Thursday. And then we do need to come back and we'll cover the questions. Or do you want to do questions now?
Can I just ask a clarifying point? If you go to a remote meeting, do you have to have a motion today saying that we might be able to have to go remotely? We did that last week. Okay.
Yeah, that was done last week.
Okay, I'm sorry, I wasn't included in that piece. Okay.
Okay, so while we're still on schedule, if you look at this one, in the reality in which we're operating, should I cross off building tours, admin team, office staff, that was an informal sort of gathering, and I guess the building tours were going to be part of the community tour. So what would be left with our staff input forum, community input forum, school board interview?
In my opinion, I agree with Director Davis that those should be canceled.
Yeah, and I think that means we kind of need to crunch some stuff together since there was some big time in between the community forum and the staff input forum.
Okay.
I would concur that we do that.
My only concern, and I agree we have to not do a community tour and not do a building tour, is I'd like to see us consider a space for an administrative team separate from staff, because I think the insights and the concerns and questions might be a little different. So if we're gonna free up time around community touring, I'd like to see us find a period of time for a discussion with administrators.
Would you like the time with the administrators to be sort of a meet and greet, get to know each other, informal conversation, or do you want it to be in effect an interview with the administrative team where input is provided by every member of the admin team that's there? That's what we're doing with the staff team and the community input team, I believe.
So I'm just old enough and tech unsavvy enough to not understand how we do a meet and greet in this type of forum. So given that lack of imagination on my part, I'd like to see it maybe be more formal with a feedback component.
I would agree. I think that we need to stay, I'd say this, more regimented, at least in that area, and try and say, especially if it turns out to be strictly all video or some kind of distance, we need to provide, say, okay, here, there's a regimented time, and these are the discussion points. So what we're doing.
I think when you're doing this digitally, I think having some order to it will help a lot. It can be difficult to keep order when you have a lot of people in one of these calls. So I think that would just help the process a bit.
Is it okay with the board then if I take this schedule for the 2nd and revamp it to eliminate building tours, lunch, and candidate prep times, probably not needed as much, and then have the staff input forum, an admin team office staff input forum, and a community input forum prior to the school board interview? And the last event for all 3 candidates or 2 would be the school board interview, would be the concluding event for them. Okay, I will work on that tomorrow and send it to Kelsey and Becky to review, make sure I captured everything. They'll share it with the board. You can approve this with finality, I believe, on Monday or Tuesday. By then we'll know a little bit more about what Thursday might bring, but at least you'll have a draft to take a look at by the end of this week, if not sooner, for round 2. So that's a great start on there. And thank you so much. Those are excellent, excellent points. All right, we do still need to have you approve the round 1 interview questions, which were sent to you and have not changed since our last meeting. I'm going to turn it over to Sandy at this point to talk about the round 1 interview questions, which we will use then on Monday and Tuesday mornings.
Okay, you received those a number of times, I think. You had tentatively looked at them when we drafted them. The format that is provided has a scale of exceeds requirements, meets requirements, and does not meet requirement. And the initial one that we shared with you had names on the left-hand side, and we just thought that we would proceed with, each person's asking a question. We're not going to do that, so it's not on this form now. Now, should we meet again in this room, we can always change that at the last minute because that's just a minor adjustment. But there are 16 questions. Questions have not changed at this time, and hopefully it still works for you, and we can go ahead and approve that.
I move approval of the questions.
I'll second that.
Right. And do we have any discussion around it? Right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries.
Okay, and then I'd also like to talk about the second round interview questions because there's such a short little timeline between the last of the interviews. You're going to deliberate, and then we come right back at it 2 days later. So what we typically do is we listen to the first round of candidates and figure out, what are some of the things that are bubbling to the surface. We don't have the luxury of that timeline right now because they're so tight and close together. So what I thought I would do, if that works for you, is that I would listen on that Monday to think about some of the questions that we might propose, again, using your criteria. So we'll have some tentative questions, but then wait until Monday evening to, propose something and then share it with you on Tuesday. Does that work for everyone? Okay.
That's very similar to what we did when we were hiring the interim and going through the process. So I think that'll work out great. Thank you.
Okay, good.
All right, so then once we've gone over the reviewing interview questions and procedures. So next up on our agenda is the reviewing the hiring process steps.
And I would offer up that everything we've already talked about are the steps we're following. And as the evening unfolds, it will obviously reveal the rest of the steps. So I don't have anything to add to that. I think we're ready to get into reviewing applicant information if the board is.
All right, so we're going to start reviewing applicant information, and we're going to begin with MSBA going over their process for how they selected their top 6 candidates and what that looked like so that we can understand their recommendations better.
Okay, so the very first thing that we typically do is we receive all the applications. Then Minnesota School Boards Association asks for 5 people to review all of the candidates. So some of them are staff and some are consultants like myself.
There we go.
Are we good?
Yeah, no,
That's better.
That's good. 5, okay? And then so what happens then is we review the applicants. We look at each application, we look at all the recommendations, the formal resume that they submit, and we do that for each candidate, trying to see if we have a match for the district. So we look at your district criteria. We also look at the whether or not they have a license and several other indicators. After we do that on our own independently, then they set up a time for all of us to chat together so that we can discuss each candidate. And what we first do is we say whether or not we want to invite the candidate with a yes, a maybe, or a no. So each candidate is presented, we say a name, we could just go right down alphabetical order, say Sandy Novak, and then all 5 of them will chime in, yes, no, or maybe, okay? We do that process for all candidates, and then when we're finished with that, we try to see which candidates rise to the surface by finding out whether or not we have consensus around who we invite back. So that's the process we use, and we try to land on 6 candidates because that number seems to work very nicely. It gives you enough of a pool so that you don't lose sight of, whether or not this one will match your criteria. It gives you enough of variation so if somebody drops out, you still have a nice pool there. Then what I also want to talk to you about is your applicant pool. There were 37 applications that were started. 25 of them were completed. So we only look at the ones that were completed during that timeline. And then you also were concerned before whether or not these candidates were from Minnesota and if our net went larger than that. So I went and I looked at each one of the applicants to see where they were from and where their experience was. And we had 20 applicants that were from Minnesota and their experiences in Minnesota schools. We had 1 from California. We had 2 from Iowa with previous experience in Minnesota. We had 1 from Wisconsin with previous experience in Minnesota, and 1 from Wyoming with previous experience in Minnesota. So the net was, large enough, but usually what happens in Minnesota is they usually have some connection to the Minnesota schools that they want to either get back here or else they, were born and raised here. And that's typically what happens. Then we also want to look at, of your pool, how deep is it and what varied experience do they have? We had 8 applicants with previous superintendent experience, and we had 17 others that had a wide array of experiences coming from multiple pathways to this new career step for them. So you have a really rich, deep pool. And it was really hard for us to land on the 6 because your pool is so strong. So then what we will do is we would like to just share an overview of each of the candidates and how their experience and their skills relate or align with your criteria. And we will use letters so that we don't, we respect the data privacy issue. And I will start with candidate A. So if you want to look for your resume, you can talk through that. And you will not have a handout of what I say. So you can either listen attentively or else you can just look through your resume trying to, find out more about this person, okay? And I'll wait until you're ready for me to start. Okay. All right, so candidate A holds a Minnesota-issued superintendent license. The candidate also has experience as a teacher, principal, and a superintendent. When your criteria talks about honesty, integrity, and ethics, words and phrases used to describe the candidate include responsible, considerate, kind, impeccable ethics,
respected leader, remarkable service mentality, and a visionary leader. Another reference said that one of the candidate A's greatest strength is building relationships through trust and honesty. When it talks about delegating and empowering staff, a reference wrote for candidate A, he or she is a dedicated leader who encourages cooperation and teamwork with his or her colleagues to create and achieve goals. With the criteria of promoting effective leadership development and communication, a reference wrote, candidate A understands the needs of people in his or her organization and works tirelessly to develop and establish a growth mindset. Our employees have felt valued with his or her presence in the district. Works with various groups to build confidence and support is the next criteria. And one reference wrote, candidate A has the ability to work well with a variety of individuals. He or she has helped to enhance the understandings of our district and a broader community. He or she has done this through implementation of a social media presence, collaboration with other entities, and advocacy at the local and state levels. The criteria of school finance, management, and fiscal management. A reference wrote, candidate A has demonstrated repeatedly through his or her leadership and problem-solving skills, his or her ability to approach situations in an analytical, logical, and objective manner. With the equity lens, this reference wrote, candidate A demonstrates a great deal of energy in creating a positive open work environment while maintaining a focus on the consistency that we serve. And then visual advocate promotes community and business partnerships. A reference wrote, candidate A's love for his or her school district is undeniable, and his or her exciting way of connecting with those he or she works with has created a trusted relationship for him or her. It's hard to use him and her each time that we have to respect the data privacy. Okay, I thought we would go through all 6 of them and then open it up for dialogue, if that's okay. Barb, do you want to take B?
Why don't you mute yours?
Yes, thank you for the reminder.
All right, I'll present candidate B. As for experience, this candidate holds a Minnesota-issued superintendent license. Candidate B has experience in community education, adult basic education, teaching, and as a university lecturer. Regarding honesty, integrity, and ethics, the words and phrases used to describe candidate B include truthful, dependable, organized, efficient, a negotiator, problem solver, communicator, and person of integrity. Regarding hiring criteria of delegates and empowers staff, candidate B's ability to provide leadership, plan, organize, and communicate with staff and colleagues is commendable, as indicated by one reference. As far as promoting effective leadership development and communication, one reference stated that candidate B is skillful at addressing and communicating complicated educational subjects and building strong relationships with all audiences. The criteria of works with various groups to build confidence and support. A reference indicated candidate B has experience working on school safety and crisis response planning with 7 police departments that comprise the school district. As for finance management and fiscal management, as indicated by one reference, candidate B understands the detail behind the revenues and how they are generated through knowledge of state statutes and federal regulations. This reference further stated that candidate B was far and away one of the best in terms of financial wisdom and expertise. As for the equity, leadership, and collaboration criteria, one reference indicated that candidate B leads with an authentic equity vision, which helped other leaders grow in their personal journeys while improving the school's environment. And the final criteria of being visible and an advocate, which promotes community and business partnerships. A reference stated that when candidate B worked together with other community leaders on a municipal project, candidate B was knowledgeable about city issues and was able to incorporate everyone's best interests in a viable solution. One reference noted that candidate B was critical to the district's early success in developing partnerships with elected officials, public and nonprofit executives, and leaders in the private sector. That is candidate B.
We can move to candidate F. The candidate holds the Minnesota
Issued superintendent license. The candidate is currently an assistant superintendent. Prior to this position, the candidate was a high school principal in the same district for 4 years. Honesty, integrity, and ethics is the next criteria. Words and phrases used to describe the candidate include fair, kind, respectful, genuine, strong, vision, integrity, engaging, cares for staff, cares for students. According to one reference, this candidate is passionate about public education and is a leader who values the hard work, listens to concerns, and cares deeply about every student. Delegates and empowers staff is the next criteria. A reference wrote, the candidate has the ability to create a culture where people feel valued, where staff know they have a voice. Another reference wrote, the candidate understands the importance of involving people in design, development, and decision-making. The next criteria is promotes effective leadership development and communication. One reference wrote, this candidate is a responsive communicator, well-organized, and good at recruiting talented leaders to work in the district. Another reference wrote, the candidate's intellectual capabilities are very strong, and he or she balances this with a calm, competent, and confident communication style. One reference commented, honestly, I don't know what I would have done without his or her mentorship while learning my new role. Works with various groups to build confidence and support is the next criteria. A reference where one of this candidate's most admirable qualities is the ability to build and sustain relationships, which is evidenced by the amount of trust teachers and staff have in him or her. This candidate led community engagement sessions comprised of teachers, parents, students, and community members during a building referendum campaign and operating levy campaign. The next one is school finance and management. A school board member wrote, this candidate has a clear, comprehensive understanding of the contemporary educational landscape, being familiar with the latest trends in school funding and budgetary management. Equity, leadership, and collaboration is the next one. One reference wanted to highlight this candidate's knowledge, understanding, and commitment to the district's equity work. The candidate has been part of an intentional shift made within the district, changing our narrative of talking about success for all students to talking about the success of each student, which involves differentiation and personalization. Visible advocate promoting community and business partnerships is the last criteria. A reference wrote, this candidate worked closely with our architects and construction manager, putting together plans for each school site to engage in planning and design. The candidate attended City Council, Planning Commission, and parent meetings in an effort to answer questions and solicit feedback about our construction projects. This reference also wrote that this candidate is engaged with post-secondary institutions and industry partners to establish career pathways for our students. That's candidate F.
All right, I'll be presenting candidate H. As for experience, the candidate holds a Minnesota-issued superintendent, principal, and teaching licenses. Candidate H has experience as a teacher, executive director, and assistant superintendent. As for the hiring criteria of honesty, integrity, and ethics, words and phrases used to describe this candidate include innovator, gracious, respectful, tireless worker, committed, encouraging, detail-oriented, highly accessible, and student-centered. According to references, candidate H demonstrates outstanding ethical leadership. As for delegates and empowers staff, a reference wrote, candidate H's shared leadership style is evident in all their work. Another stated, candidate H makes sure the student perspective is a decisive factor in almost every decision made by the administration, not as an afterthought. The criteria of promoting effective leadership development and communication, a reference said, candidate H is truly a collaborative leader who listens and understands the value of working together to address problems and identify opportunities to improve the quality of instruction and overall student experience while honoring the hard work and commitment of all staff. As for works with various groups to build confidence and support, a reference wrote that in a recent survey done by their district, community support was very high, above 80%. When asked what programs gave them confidence in what the school district was doing, the top 3 programs were those candidate H was the key leader on. As for school finance management and fiscal management, a reference said, candidate H is a certified administrator of school finance and operations, a professional who has validated his or her skills and knowledge against a North American standard and demonstrated a commitment to fiscal transparency and responsibility in school business management. As for your criteria on equity, leadership, and collaboration, a reference said, under candidate H's leadership, we went from a system in which we analyzed data based on averages with no equity plan to a system in which we disaggregate data and have a robust and intentional equity plan. As for the criteria of being visible and advocating community and business partnerships, a reference wrote, candidate H is well connected and sought out by community partners to create learning opportunities for students. Community leaders deeply value and appreciate candidate H's leadership. That was candidate H.
Maybe she can talk closer toward the laptop.
Okay. Okay, next is candidate M. Does that work? Okay. This candidate holds a Minnesota-issued superintendent license. The candidate has experience as an assistant superintendent, principal, assistant principal, technology coordinator, teacher, and university adjunct professor.
Oh. I don't think so.
It's great. And now that she's actually reading, it's very muffled.
I think what's happening is you're talking to the right and your mic is, I don't know where, it's somewhere here. And you're talking here and your mic's there. I know it's a nuisance.
Okay. So let me try this. See if this will work.
That sounds a ton better already.
It is when you think that.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
sorry, Sandy.
Where was I? I think I was on honesty, wasn't I? How appropriate, right? Okay. Honesty, integrity, and ethics. Words and phrases. How's that?
Perfect.
Yep, very good. Thank you.
Words and phrases used to describe candidate M include student-centered, determined, trustworthy, loyal, sets high expectations, shows empathy, has a great sense of humor. Next criteria is delegates and empowers staff. A reference wrote, candidate M provides opportunities for staff to think creatively and consider new opportunities for students, parents, or themselves. Another reference indicated candidate M intentionally seeks input from individuals impacted by decisions, then makes adjustments as necessary to incorporate their input. The next criteria is promote effective leadership development and communication. One reference stated, candidate M provided direct communication when speaking to the board on needed changes and how to implement them, so we understood the direction and could speak to the community. The next criteria is works with various groups to build confidence and support. Candidate M was instrumental in pulling off the largest change in a district's history while ensuring staff, students, and families felt little pain, as indicated by one reference. Another reference wrote, candidate M actively collaborates with leaders in other districts, as well as business and industry experts about innovation and design thinking, then shares new ideas within our district. Under the criteria for school finance management and fiscal management, candidate M has experience with developing and managing both the large high schools as well as a portion of a large district's budget. Equity, leadership, and collaboration. One reference indicated candidate M is unflinching and desired to serve all kids while providing equitable services and support to ensure every child is successful. Visible advocate promotes community and business partnerships is the last criteria. A reference expressed, candidate M worked with the school board to restructure the world's best workforce committee to include more community and fewer staff. That's candidate M. One more.
And I'll be presenting candidate X. Candidate X holds a Minnesota-issued superintendent license. This candidate also has experience as an assistant principal, assistant superintendent, and teacher. As for honesty, integrity, and ethics, words and phrases used to describe candidate X include passion for self-development, strong work ethic, and commits to relationship building. As for the criteria of delegating and empowering staff, a reference wrote, candidate X created a safe and supportive culture with shared purpose where people felt free to leave their safety nets, take risks, facilitate collective synergy, and implement lasting change that made a positive difference for students. Candidate X has a track record of mentoring and coaching their direct reports, which resulted in a number of assistant principals acquiring principal positions in large schools. Candidate X knows when to coach, guide, mentor, lead, or just get out of the way. As for the criteria of promoting effective leadership development and communication, one reference indicated that candidate X quickly learned how to work with the school board and how to communicate effectively and concisely. The criteria of works with various groups to build confidence and support. Candidate X is a connector who seeks partners and draws strength from a team effort, as indicated by a reference. As for school finance management and fiscal management, one reference stated that candidate X managed a $100 million building project associated with doubling the size of their high school. As far as your criteria of equity, leadership, and collaboration, a reference specified candidate X is able to help diverse constituents find common ground by listening and developing a win-win solution for everyone. And finally, your criteria of being visible and advocating, promoting community and business partnerships. One reference indicated that candidate X showed tremendous skill in facilitating community groups as they rebounded from a failed building bond referendum. Candidate X built consensus around their new approach to a larger building project and helped pass it. That is candidate X. So I'm going to turn it back over to Sandy in just a minute to sort of tell you what's next as the board begins your deliberations. But first, I wanted to echo her comments on behalf of MSBA that you have an extraordinarily strong pool of candidates. We were very pleased and had some very, very robust discussions in trying to get it down to only 6 to bring forth to the board because you've got some real leaders in here. I hope you're pleased. We were truly impressed with it. As you deliberate, I would give you a couple of reminders to only refer to candidates by their alphabet signed letters. Try to use non-gendered pronouns, no he or she, either a they or a candidate A or whatever. Try to avoid identifying them gender-wise, and really be careful not to talk about their current or past experience. That would be very identifiable. If you say, well, currently in their role, they serve as this, that doesn't take much to identify who that person would be if someone knows how to use Google. So being as generic as you can, it can be a very difficult conversation. It's hard to be vague about something as important as this. And so it's that delicate balance of data privacy with open meeting law. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sandy to sort of point you in the next direction.
Okay, whoops. If you remember way back when we started the presentation to you earlier on, we said that there were really 3 options for the board. You can either take our recommendation as is with all 6 candidates. You can take, the second option is you can take some of the candidates and then choose to eliminate some and then add some of your own. That's the second option. Or the third option, which is rarely, I don't think I've ever seen it done, but that's okay, you still have that option. You can eliminate all 6 of the candidates that we recommend and start anew with the pool that you wish to have. So at this point, we're going to turn it over to your board chair and talk about the process that you would like to use to reach consensus on the anywhere from 5 to 7 candidates that you bring forward for the first round interviews. Okay.
Sorry, the layout in this room is a little bit awkward to see here and to do that. So I guess one thing we can do is we can go down through each candidate one by one and just say, we could do it how MSBA did it and say yes, maybe no, and see if we have consensus for these 6, or which of these 6 we have consensus on, and kind of go from there. And then if we have consensus on a number of them, they can just straight on move forward, and then we can choose to bring in other candidates if we want, or if anyone else has a suggestion for how they would like to go forward with this. That would be kind of my thought.
It's not a big process suggestion. I just have a couple of candidates that would have been in my individual top 6. And I guess, would it be appropriate, or do you have feedback on an individual candidate or 2? And then a separate question is, can I presume at this point that none of the 25 candidates have withdrawn their application? Is that accurate?
If I could piggyback off of, can everybody hear me okay? If I could piggyback off of Lisa, maybe procedurally, Kelsey, I think we're on the right track. I don't know what you think, Lisa, but if we can agree on some of these and winnow it down, then we can maybe follow up with hey, I had this on my list, you didn't, and then get in that conversation that way. Once we've, know where we're at, kind of get a feel for where we're at in terms of the 6 that we're starting with, and then maybe circle back to that piece. But I agree that I have a question or 2 in that same area.
Yeah, my only, and maybe it takes 2 loops around the track, because my only concern is if we say yes, no, maybe, and we get some number, and then we have questions about a larger group, how do we get back to, and I would agree that 5 to 7 is a reasonable number. If we go into that process accepting, I'm gonna stop waving my hands in front of my own camera. I can see it out of the corner of my eye. If we agree that there's a possibility for a second round, because I still want us to maintain that goal of 5 to 7. I don't want to say, hey, 4 look really solid, and then here's 4 more, and totally protect the first 4. That's my only feedback on that.
I guess I'd like to say that, we probably should look at the 6 that were presented and either say these are 6 viable candidates, or work through the process and either agree or disagree with these. So then we can look at if there are other ones that we want to add or subtract we could have that option, but I think we need to start with the 6 that are presented and then either add them to the list, our list, or take them away from what our list is going to be. That would be my start, and to say, okay, let's look at the 6 first and maybe individually go around and say, okay, yay, nay, maybe whatever, and give us a feeling for where those original 6 are at. And then we can move on from there.
Yeah, I would just be hesitant about opening it up to too many right off the bat, just because then, I don't know, like I have my top choices, right? I went through and I kind of made my list, and I know some of them are on this. And so those are candidates that I could say yes to right away. And then there are other candidates that I also really liked, and but maybe they weren't quite at my top. And so those I would say maybe. And so then we can continue discussions and maybe pull in some of the other candidates that school board members saw as being in their top picks. I don't know, I think this is going to be a lot of discussion ahead. I think we had some really great candidates. So does it sound good to you to start with the 6?
I think it sounds good to start with 6, narrow them down, say yes to some, say no to some, say, hey, I really like this candidate. My candidate wasn't on this list. Can we discuss this one? Because maybe this candidate, I'll just say I don't know, was a maybe to me, but I really thought that candidate 1 was a really good candidate. So can we discuss that and say, have a discussion that way?
Just seeing if
looking to see if Scott wants
yeah,
to
that's
weigh
what I
in.
was trying to see, what Scott's kind of thoughts are here.
I think we start with the 6. Let's start there and see where that gets us.
All right, and so then we'll just go in alphabetical order, and we'll go through and I'll say, you know, who says yes and who says maybe, and we'll just count how many people are voicing that. So if you can raise your hand too, and then we can kind of count it. Does that sound good?
So should we be all unmuted or muted, or
No, we
it's
can
just
say
gonna be solely on
muted, and
visual?
we'll just do hands. Yeah. All right. So candidate A, yes. Okay. Candidate A, maybe. Okay. And
Can you tell us a number?
6. So 6 yes and 1 maybe. All right. Candidate B, yes. So 1 yes. Candidate B, maybe. Okay. And candidate B, no. Okay. All right. So we have 1 yes, 5 maybes, 2 no's. And don't feel shy about saying no to a candidate. They are all alphabetized. No one knows who this candidate is. The candidate does not know you're saying no. Don't worry. Okay. Candidate F, yes. So 2, 3. Candidate F, maybe. Candidate F, no. Okay, so we have 3 yes, 3 maybes, and 3 no's. Okay.
Can we loop back? I didn't realize
Yeah.
no was on the table.
Oh.
So for A, I'd like to go to no.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Candidate H, yes. 1. Okay, we have 6. Candidate H, maybe. Okay, candidate H, no. All right, so 6 yeses, 1 maybe, 0 no's. All right, candidate M, yes. Okay, candidate M, maybe. Candidate M, no. Okay, so we have 5 yeses, 1 maybe, and 1 no. Candidate X, yes. 2. Okay, candidate X, maybe. Okay, 5. And candidate X, no. Just making sure I'm counting all the hands correctly. Okay, so 2 yeses, 5 maybes, and 0 nos. So there's not really true consensus on any of them. I would say candidate H is the closest with 6 yeses and 1 maybe. So I don't remember who was the maybe on candidate H, but 6 yes, but then the 1 maybe moved to no. So
Can I make a suggestion that if we have 6 and a maybe on candidate H, maybe we open it up there because we might be able to clear that up relatively quickly?
That's what I was thinking. Yep. So who was the maybe for candidate H? Stephanie. So do you have maybe anything you want to talk about, questions, anything like that?
Unmute myself. There were no major reservations about this particular candidate. I just found some others to be more strong in their experience and what they could possibly bring to the table. And that's why I went with maybe, because I identified others as stronger candidates, but I'm not opposed to interviewing this individual.
Sorry, so I guess that doesn't quite bring us to consensus there, but pretty close that candidate H appears to be kind of at the top at the moment from the 6 that we have here. The other ones that were close, candidate A had 6 yeses. That's the only other one with 6 yeses, and then candidate M had 5, but those are the only 3 then that actually had a quorum of the board voting yes for. So A, H, and M. So A had 6 yeses and M had 5. So do we want to start looking at those? Each of those did have 1 person who was a strong no. So I don't know if we have a strong no, if we just want to go straight into looking at other candidates versus a maybe, or if we would like to continue looking at those since they did have a quorum of the board, a majority of the board in favor of them.
I think with a quorum, I don't know that you can just dismiss it with a strong no, because that's 1 of 7. I think that's a little tricky. I think it bears a little bit more conversation before we dismiss it.
I agree with what Brian just said.
I agree as well.
So then why don't we start by
as the strong no, as the no. I'm not sure
candidate A.
as the no. I'm not. Maybe I'm just a little bit lost in the process. I'm not sure we're dismissing or completely accepting right now. I thought we were going to get a sense of if it was pros or cons or who's still in there. So I don't think we're dismissing anybody. I felt as I looked at the overall 6 that were recommended from MSBA, which admittedly was out of a strong pool, that candidate A was the least strong of those candidates. And in terms of experience and how well that person aligned with the entire range of our interests, of our district's interests, and knowing that I have other candidates in my estimation that very closely align and that I would be very interested in hearing from in an interview process, I acknowledge we need to make some space in that group. And that's where I felt like there was space in that group. That candidate A was not a person that rose in any of my read-throughs into the top for myself.
Okay, so that's still with 6 saying yes, I would say candidate A is still kind of in the top of, where we're looking. In case we never have, maybe there isn't a candidate that we get all 7 on board with right now. How about
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Finish your thought.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was just going to add that I hadn't thought about it the way that Lisa had just gone through that. And with that in mind, I would move A to a maybe. Because I also have the 6 that MSBA came back with, I aligned with most of them, but not all.
Okay.
So
Would you like me to suggest a process now? Oftentimes, if there is this kind of discussion, it might be best for you to open it up to your other candidates also, so you can talk. And then with each a person that you open it up and have a conversation about, it oftentimes works nicely if you also do that yes, maybe, no at that time. So then you have a little bit more information on each one of the ones that you bring forward, and then you can see it as a whole pool, okay?
All right, so then we'll open it up from there, and why don't we just go around and we'll start. Lisa's in the top left of our little Zoom screen here. So we can just start up there and we'll just move over and let everyone kind of, if Lisa has a strong candidate to speak about, and we can go forward that way. Yeah, I mentioned that earlier.
I've been on you've been on Facebook too, Brian. You saw that same thing.
Yeah.
I saw that same thing.
All right, so Lisa, is there a particular candidate that you would like to bring forward? We'll start with just say your top one.
Okay, that's tricky because I have 2. The most, I think, candidate R, I found very interesting, and I found the range of that person's professional experience was very interesting, and has a very, very, it would appear to have a very, very strong equity, a grounding in equity. And I found that very appealing, as well as I need to get my Zoom large enough to be able to read. I just think if we're trying to expand the range of people that we're considering, and that they've had experience at the director, a strong curriculum experience, and then some private sector.
I guess I would like to say that R was one of my top candidates. I think that the budgeting items, the equity, the management skills all kind of fell into what I thought were important here.
I actually had R on my list as well.
Okay.
6.
So I'm seeing actually a lot of heads nodding for R. So why don't we just try the yes, maybe, no again for R? So candidate R, yes. Okay, candidate R, maybe. Okay, so 5 yes, 2 maybe, and 0 no's. That's the start. Okay, so next up on our Brady Bunch screen is Dave. So Dave, do you have a top candidate that you would like to bring?
One of my other top candidates. Problem solving, fits into the budget issue. Leader by example, and has construction experience. That was the one thing that caught my eye right off from the get-go. So T.
Dave, I apologize. Which letter was that?
T. T is in Tom.
T is in Tom. Thank you.
So do we have any discussion around T? Anyone? T was also one that had stood out for me, particularly experience with working with Avid. That this candidate has had a lot of experience working with local governments as well, beyond school experience, and also staff development curriculum experience. So if there's no more discussion around T, we can take a poll on T as well. So yes for T. Okay, and maybe for T. All right, and no for T. Okay, so T had 5 yeses, 0 maybes, and 2 nos. All right, so Scott, do you have a candidate to bring to the top?
I do. Candidate G is in Gergen, although it's not me. I'll let on. So candidate G again with their experience. I know everybody has their resume there, so I'll let you take a look at that. But I don't have a lot more to add to that one.
All right, so does anyone else have any comments about G or any discussion to bring up?
That was my top candidate too.
That was one of my top ones too. The feedback is really throwing me off. In particular, building relationships, and then the community involvement, showing that there's a pattern with this particular candidate, that they're involved with the community and the whole, like, student, administration, educator, the whole people. That's what they're involved in.
I'm not going to repeat with Stephanie, but I'd like to piggyback off that. This person was on my list as well. At least I thought definitely worth bringing into the 6 to interview with.
All right, so then from there, let's say candidate G, yes. Okay. All right, candidate G, maybe. All right, and candidate G, no. Okay. All right, Becky, do you have a candidate we haven't brought up yet?
So my top ones have been said. I did have E written down as well. I wrote down, I liked experience. Construction, has worked with budgets similar maybe to ours, Avid programming, and strategic planning.
Yeah, and one thing that I had written on my notes about candidate E was an interesting background with psychology. And as we talk about mental health needs with our students, that seemed like a good quality to kind of have experience with.
I think this struck me about that person as well.
Mm-hmm.
What was the count for G? I'm sorry, I missed if I missed that. What was the count for G?
G was 5 yes, 1 maybe, and 1 no.
Thank you.
Okay. So then candidate E, right? E is an elephant. That's what we're, okay. Candidate E, yes. All right, candidate E, maybe. And candidate E, no. Okay, so that was 3 yeses, 3 maybes, and 1 no. This is difficult. I'm interested to see how we narrow this down here. We seem to be split all over the place. All right, so Stephanie, is there someone we haven't brought up yet?
one that I want to bring up is Q. What stood out to me with this candidate is that they leading diversity and then the negotiations piece too. I think there's a lot of potential with this individual. I also think that it's kind of a gamble. So I did like a little asterisk, but I think this individual is worth exploring.
All right, do we have any other comments or discussion around Q? All right, okay. We're just gonna give Lisa a second here.
Candidate Q was on my secondary list. I think I have some of the same thoughts as Stephanie, which is, but it's going to be hard for me to rise above a maybe candidate given the strength of the rest of the pool in terms of looking at the top 6.
I'm actually right there with you, Lisa. I just wanted to bring this one up because I was very impressed with their resume and what they turned in.
All right, so then we will take a vote on Q as well. So yes, maybe, and no. Okay. So that was 0 yes, 5 maybe, 2 no's. And so then what I would say is at this point, all of my top candidates have been brought up by other school board members. And so is there someone else that we haven't brought up now that we've given everyone a chance to kind of share something?
My process was to have a selection of 6, but to determine if there's one find one that I was most passionate about and be prepared to discuss that one. And that one is on our list already. So.
Sorry, mine too. The one that I was prepared to discuss already has made it onto this list.
If it looks to me, we have 6 candidates with at least 5 on there.
Yep. So looking back at the list, if there's not another person to bring up, based on the counts, we have 6 candidates that have had 5 or more yes votes. So we have not reached 7, but we do have we have 5 candidates who had 5 votes and 1 candidate who had 6.
Can you recap those letters for me?
Yep. So I'll go back over that. So candidate A had 5 yeses, 1 maybe, and 1 no. Candidate H had 6 yeses and 1 maybe. Candidate M.
Well, hold on. So A was 511.
Yep. A was 511.
Mm-hmm.
H was 610.
Thank you.
M was 511.
Mm-hmm.
R was 520.
Mm-hmm.
T was 502. And G was 511.
Thank you.
What was that, Lisa?
I'm just looking at all the range of candidates that were still in the mix, both from MSBA's recommendation and then the runs. And I wasn't taking notes during it. Could you run the count for me on?
Sure.
I think it's B, F, E, G, and X.
Yep. So B was 151. F was 331. X was 250. E was 331. And Q was 0, 5, and 2. So how do people feel if we go forward with the 6 that have reached 5 or more yes votes?
Yep. I would go with the people that are laid out here that have 5 more as the 6. Anybody else have any comment to that?
I don't, looking at the others, I don't have anyone that I feel strongly enough to move into that grouping. That's my feedback. And I'll also give the feedback that this has been, that this was a big pool of candidates with some really, really strong candidates in it. And this took me a long time to go through, and boy, I can see some, we're no matter what we do here, when we only take 6, we're going to be leaving some very quality candidates off the list.
I would agree. It took me the better part of a couple of days by looking at it and then come back and reviewing it again. So I would agree we had a good number of very, very good candidates.
I'm going to say in that group of candidates that have received 5 or 6 votes, there is a candidate that I would find very difficult to support. Should they come through the interview process, I'd find it very, very difficult. I guess I'm willing to let that play out. The candidate that to me we're losing that is hard for me to lose is F. So I'd like to go back and reconsider that, or at least ask people to take that, give that candidate a second look. And I feel like my support for that person was only reinforced by the summary that Barb provided on that candidate around their alignment with collaborative leadership development, community engagement, and finance.
So to follow up then, if we're looking at possibly adding a candidate, who is the candidate that you would have a difficult time supporting?
G. And as I said previously, I felt like of the group that MSBA brought forward, I felt like A was the least strong candidate out of that pool, and that would be a second one that would be, I feel is not as competitive.
I certainly had F in my top tier in my own evaluations, and I believe I voted that way as well. So I would certainly be interested in including them, but I would be curious. Yeah, I'm open to the discussion. Let's just put it that way.
Director Waits, can I ask for us to have, can we have 2 minutes to reread it?
Sure. And I was also going to say with F, there was someone who had voted no. And so maybe it would be good to hear the perspective of the person who did say no to F versus a yes or a maybe, just to kind of hear both sides there. And we can wait until we've reread it, and that's fine too, if we want to take 2 minutes.
Yep, and that's great. When we come back from that 2 minutes, could we also hear from MSBA on the candidates that have been brought up that we did not bring up? Or I'm sorry, the candidates that the board has identified outside of the 6 that MSBA brought to us. Did I say that correctly? I think I did that time. So any additional feedback you could give us there, and I know it's difficult, but anything you can do would be helpful. All right.
No,
yes.
Scott, I was going to ask the same thing when we got there, so
Okay.
I'm right there with you.
All right, so you have 2 minutes then to review. Okay. So was that enough time for everyone to kind of review a little bit there? Okay, I think Scott is still reviewing. It seems to cut out video when you pop into a different program. So we'll wait for Scott to hop back on.
Maybe do them all, but I'm not sure I've got these all the way over now.
All right, so candidate F was 3 yes, 3 maybes, and 1 no. So F didn't have a lot of no's. It just also didn't have a lot of F's. It was kind of an in between. And then G, the one that Lisa has brought up as a possible switch, perhaps had 5 yeses, 1 maybe, and 1 no. All right. So does anyone have any discussion about candidate F, or if we were to bring on candidate F, decisions about who we would leave out of the pool, or any comments on that?
I am going to throw you a little bit of a curveball. I don't know who I'd leave out, to be honest, but after rereading this, there's a number of things I like about this candidate. I'm going to go a little bit outside the box and say that this candidate not only has those components that have already been mentioned, but I'm noticing a certain cross function within athletics and some other things that I'm not seeing in a ton of the other candidates, which is important as well when you talk about the overall picture of what you want as individuals. So I'm more impressed now after looking at it yet again.
So were you a maybe before and you'll move to a yes?
I was a maybe. I'll
Okay.
move to a yes.
So I'm not willing.
This is F.
I'm not willing to take away any of the candidates, but can we go to 7 if necessary? I feel that A and G were my top candidates. I didn't necessarily never looked at F. I believe has potential, but I'm not willing to take away A or G at that expense.
I think we could probably fit it in to do 7, couldn't we?
Well,
She said.
Yeah, they said
Let's keep
we could
hearing
do 5,
feedback.
6, or 7.
Yeah, but let's hear some feedback from MSBA and then look at the whole pool again, maybe. Or not the whole pool, but, On which one? I think we're at E, G, R, and T are the ones that you didn't give us feedback on.
Sorry, R, T, and G, no E or Q. So R, T, and G are the 3 that MSBA did not give us that we had 5 yes votes on.
Oh, we're only looking at the ones we had 5 yes votes on.
Mm-hmm. So at this point, we'll open it up to MSBA and see what your thoughts are.
I'll start. When we have the conversation, we're looking for, again, how well they align with your hiring criteria. We're also looking at their experience, how long they've held the positions that they have held. You're a large district. Have they held administrative positions within districts that would expose them to some of the intricacies of running a large district? I can tell you that when we had our 6, we also talk about what we call people on the bubble that we felt were very close to that top 6. And R, T, and G were not in our bubble pool amongst the 5 of us who sat around the table and discussed the candidates. Sandy, do you have anything to add on R, T, or G? I'll say as a relatively new staff member at MSBA, I have been really impressed with the vetting process. And when I first started and I was doing this in my beginning months, Sandy Gunlock would always say, take a good hard look at everything. Don't fall in love with a resume. And she said letters of reference are always outstanding. So she helped me to look deeper into some of the experiences and how they translate into a district such as yours. I also have to say I'm very, very impressed with the brains that sit around the table and the folks that have been doing this for a long time. And I'm working, fortunately, with people that have served in superintendent roles and had exposure to this sort of work for anywhere from 20, 30, 40 years a person. So the process, as a relatively new person, has always really impressed me. And we knew, I think, when we saw this pool, it was going to be a challenge for you to find 6 that we all, because they're all good people. I mean, every single person you're talking about potentially adding in or pulling folks out, they are good candidates. And so I'll echo whoever said earlier that if for some reason, I think it might have been Scott, if someone isn't in the top 6 you choose to interview, doesn't mean they were not a phenomenal candidate. You simply had a really good response to your position opening. So
for candidate F, well, let me ask MSBA a question first. So if we were to bring in candidate F and have 7, what would that do if we up our interviews to 7 instead of 6?
Probably wanted on the first.
Probably on that first day, you'd add another interview on Monday, the 30th, because on Tuesday, after 3 interviews, you've got your deliberations to go from 6 or 7 to 2 or 3. And we never know how long that's going to take. Sometimes it's pretty quickly. Folks that you thought were fabulous on paper don't interview well, or said something that just did not resonate with you. So it might go quickly to winnow it down, or it might take you a long time to figure out who your finalists are going to be. So I'd echo Sandy that it should probably be on your first day. Do 4 on Monday and 3 on Tuesday. It's entirely your call. This is completely obviously in the board's hands, but you could certainly do it.
Okay. Oh.
I would like to just highlight what I just heard Barb and Sandy say, which is the 3 candidates that were brought forward, and I will acknowledge that I brought forward one of them as a interesting person with a background that was unique, were not bubble candidates for them, which I need to really sit with for some time, 30 seconds maybe, and understand, I think, what they're really saying with that. And this is the point in the process where I said, maybe we have to roll back around. It's not just yes, no on the first group and then add, but it's that second lap around the track saying, okay, we asked MSBA to provide us guidance here and leadership. And we need to really, I feel like I really need to stop and think about what I just heard Barb and Sandy say.
Yeah, I echo Lisa's thoughts on that. And with those thoughts in mind, I would change on G, and I would move away from a yes and at least to a maybe. And on F, as in Frank or Frida, I already was a yes on that one, and I would remain there. And I would like, if we could not expand to 7, that would be my preference. 4 hours plus 15. I mean, we're going to be in 5 hours of interviews for that one day. That's a lot. So if we can narrow it to 6, great. If we can't, if we really feel strongly we need to keep it at 7, I will wholeheartedly support that.
So I would like to hear from the person who said no to F, and maybe hear what the reasoning was for that. I was one of the maybes. And so now if we're looking at that, we're only at 5 candidates that have 5 or more votes now that you have switched one of yours. And so I'm trying to decide if I would like to, to switch over to F. Who was the no vote? I didn't keep track for F. We had 1 person vote no.
It might have been
I'm
me.
going to put no there.
I would think it was either a maybe or a no.
Okay. I thought I was the no. And
Okay, then
my
I think I was a
feelings about-
maybe. Yeah.
Okay, there you go. Thank you. I put no there because I felt that when I looked at back what I had written down and then reviewed, it was like, okay, years of experience in current position kind of struck me there. And that probably set the tone for what I was thinking about with that candidate.
Okay. Does anyone have any thoughts about that concern? Any things like that? I mean, after hearing MSBA and looking back over candidate F, I feel comfortable with candidate F, and I would feel comfortable moving my vote forward with a yes vote and bringing candidate F in, especially knowing that there is a board member with a very strong like desire for this candidate. I would like to acknowledge that and honor that. And I mean, I don't have any particular concerns with F. So they were in my second tier. So
To speak to Dave's concern about time and service, we have candidates in this pool that are serving in equivalent or higher positions that aren't in our top 9 that are currently in those positions. So I felt like the range of experience in the size of district spoke to the complexity. That was the piece that maybe I just gave a little more credit to.
I was looking at it and trying to say, okay, here, if this candidate in their current position, I just kind of was reviewing back behind the current time frame for their current position, and I thought, okay, looking when licensure, if you go back to see when they were originally licensed, their licensure date, and then look forward, it's like, I'm not comfortable with that yet. And sorry. I guess I'm thinking that I just saw 6 other candidates that I felt were, had a more compelling point and rose higher up the line than that individual did. Now,
so if we're okay moving F forward, how would we feel about removing G from the pool? Because that is a discussion we would need to bring in as well.
G was my top candidate, and F I had 2 stars, and G I had 4 stars. So I feel strongly about having G. I liked the experience. I liked the resume I had that had budget experience, strategic planning, diversity. I know it's not part of MSBA's recommendations, but I mean, we can have a discussion on it, but right now I'm not necessarily feeling that we should take G off the playing field yet.
I agree with Becky. If we're going to take anybody off, I would actually say R. And that's because I feel strongly about candidate G and what they can bring to the table. And F didn't stand out to me. I thought they fell into the pool that was right in the 50 percentile of all the candidates. They do bring some good experience and potential. I just don't know if they're the right fit.
I think we need to bring T in the discussion as well, because that particular candidate, again, it went, I have it written down as 502. I hope that's correct. So 5 yes, 0 maybe, 2 no's. And that particular candidate, again, did not even make the bubble with MSBA. So
I agree, Scott.
I think that's one. I think I was a yes on that one, and I could certainly change over.
So then it sounds like what we're looking at is we can pull in, we have 3 candidates for sure, A, H, and M. And then we can pull in 3 candidates from the pool of F, G, R, and T. So we can do a type of star system and say, you know, you get 3 votes. And where are you going to use your votes? And then whoever gets the most votes, well, I guess, or we say you get 2 votes. Do you have a suggestion for how to kind of narrow it down? 3? Each person can vote for 3. Okay. Okay, so why don't we take, we'll say 3 minutes to go back over those 4 and to kind of pick where you would like to put your 3 votes.
Kelsey, can I ask one question? We seem, I could be wrong about this. I'm just trying to take it all in. I know it's a lot coming in at once, but I'm trying to get my letter straight. Scott, you were just referencing T, right? We were just talking about T a second ago.
T as in Thomas,
Okay.
or Teresa.
Got it. Okay, so there's been a lot of fluctuating on T. Maybe we should look at T first and see where that even falls out, because it seems like a lot of people are stepping away from T now. You may resolve your issue just by looking at T again.
No,
T is the only one in the list that had 2 no's.
Right.
Other than Q.
Yeah, I think this is why we would need to look at this as a group, because I think if we're comparing, then I would say I would put a yes one place and I would move one of my maybes to a no. And then you would see a difference. And so I think that all of them are kind of fluctuating as we're kind of trying to decide the top choices here.
So you're saying that we would pick 3 of the 4, and then we threw a rat. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, so 3 minutes and then we'll come back.
Can I say one quick thing? You are doing an extraordinary job as a board right now. We've seen deliberations and you are doing this extremely well. It's thoughtful, it's honest, you're being patient, and I just want to commend you. I know you're not done yet, but kudos to, you're not done yet. But kudos. You really, truly are doing very, very well. So thank you. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'd like to look at candidate A, and then I've reviewed the experience in the current position, and I'm going to change mine from yes to no on candidate A.
All right, well then that would put candidate A also in with this group that we're working with. So so if we're moving away from candidate A, are we talking about now there are 5 potentials and we're voting for 4? Kind of a curveball there.
No, I think what happened was A was in that top portion. A was a yes for A, H, and M were included in the pool that are moving forward. And you just affirmed that you would want even a stronger commitment to A. Is that correct?
No.
Oh, you changed it from yes to no?
Yes, he just pulled A out of the confirmed names.
So I think we moved from a 5-1-1 on A to a 4-1-2 on A.
Oh,
okay.
Man.
So now we have 5. I feel like I need a chalkboard. I need a dry erase board, and we need to be able to tally this so everyone can see it somewhere. Would like to. We're in a classroom.
If only we had stickers. We need sticker dots, right?
Except
stickers that didn't really stick.
Stickers
that didn't stick, and yeah.
And everyone has to be able to see how we vote. So we're working on a dry erase board right now. My visual learner needs to figure this out.
And Mike's like, all my cameras are pointing the wrong way.
Okay, I'm bringing my mic. Oh, are you doing it? You've got it? Okay, Becky's got it.
And you guys are doing a great job keeping your mic straightened out and everything for us as well. So
this is how they had recommended that we do it. So having all of the candidates here and then having the school board members, and we'll tally as they vote, and we'll have a total over here. Does that sound good?
Can we move a computer so they can see the board?
I will move mine. I'll move mine.
Oh, that's okay.
I like standing. Let's see. Can you see the board?
Okay, so to be clear.
We can. What are we making? We can tell that there's.
Tally.
Yeah, we can tell there's a board there, but we cannot read it
They
in
can't
any
see.
way.
They can't see the lettering.
Okay. Then we'll just keep you updated.
So I just want to understand where we are. Yeah. My sheet's getting super messy. So we're H and M, to go all the way back to the beginning. H and M are right at this point are considered to be moving forward. They should not get comfortable in their position.
Apparently not.
I'm teasing. I appreciate what you did, David. I did the same thing. I went back and re-looked at the cumulative number of resumes and really tried to start fresh, given the insight. So I appreciate you taking time to do that.
Sorry, I don't have my ruler.
Keep going, you're doing good.
Okay.
Mine's not straight.
For those of you that can't see the board, what they're doing right now are what Becky's doing is A, F, G, R, and T are on the board, and then she's putting all of our initials across, and it looks like we're gonna tally.
And you still have 3.
Okay, we still have 3.
So how, to be clear, there's a discussion going on now about how many votes we have or tallies we have. So
originally we said 3 votes when we had 4 people. Do we still want to do 3 votes now that there are 5? Okay, so you get to pick your top 3, okay? And we will go 1 board member at a time, starting with DP.
Get on mute. If we do the top 3 now, though, we're gonna end up with 5 and not 6.
No, mathematically it will work out. We're going to take the ones with the most. We'll have another. Am I on or am I off?
You're off.
On or off?
You're off.
And something happens to my thing that I can't unmute it.
Just Alt A.
Okay.
That's Scott. That's Scott's spreadsheet.
Oh, wow, that's pretty cool.
Scott, loving the spreadsheet.
Get too impressed. I'm looking around for colored
Okay,
dots right now. I'm
so
gonna
let's
stick 'em to my
discuss
screen.
tallies. Am I voting? I want to discuss tallies. Can we allocate more than 1 tally to a candidate? Why not? I mean, if this is about,
In a
if
force,
this is about speaking to your, I mean,
there is a process that has been used where you can do that. You can allocate all 3 of your votes to that one person. What we're going to do after we do all the tally, after everybody votes for their 3, puts their 3 there, we will look at who rises to the top again and see if we can land on 6. So the process is you can allocate those 3 any way you want. If you feel strongly about one person and you want them in the pool, you might put all 3 in next to that person. If you feel like you have 3 equal candidates that you really want to be in the pool, you might divide your vote that way. But in the end, we'll have a discussion again about, these are the ones that have 6 votes. These are the ones that have 5 votes. These are the ones that have 4 votes, and see if we can reach consensus again. Okay? It's just the starting point for another discussion.
thank you, Sandy. That was my understanding. But then I heard something different in the like makeup of the Excel spreadsheet, and I just wanted to understand. So our tallies may be allocated
Any way you want.
any way we want, which will then lead us, this is not a final vote.
Right.
This is not a vote. This is a place to
Have
leap
another
off into
discussion.
the next conversation.
Okay, who
You
wanted,
won't
who,
use a yes, no, maybe.
who was
Because
gonna,
They're
who
just
was-
putting a tally mark now.
you guys still hear me okay?
Yes, but your spreadsheet disappeared, or whoever had the spreadsheet
No, I
disappeared.
did. Yep,
Oh.
I'll share it here again. I just need to get back to my main screen.
So then I guess based on our board, we've got Dave Pemble first. So
You would go in the same order for each one, okay? That will make it clear and
go candidate by candidate.
Yep. Start with A, and then you call out and go in that same order, DP, LH, BP. So, and then when you get to the next candidate, you go in the same order.
Okay.
And that makes it clear, okay?
So what is the order?
Okay.
Just
So
I'm
the
clear.
order is Dave, Lisa, Becky. Okay. Scott, Brian, Stephanie, and then me. Okay. Yeah. So candidate A, Dave. You get 3, you vote for 3.
I'm sorry, I did that wrong. He would just say where his 3 are.
Okay,
and
that's
we'll
what
put
I
the
thought.
tally.
Okay, Dave, where
Sorry.
do you want your 3 tallies?
But you're gonna say all 3 of yours.
And you're gonna take yourself off mute.
Okay, let me get this figured out right. You're telling me that we're gonna start with A and go all the way?
No, I'm sorry. I gave, you're gonna say where you place your 3 pieces, okay? Actually, we should be doing this all at the same time, writing them so we can't be influenced by others, because you might change your vote as you see this proceed.
I'm looking at this graph and that graph.
Yeah. And I'm,
So Scott and Becky, since you're at home, we're going to try to do all of this at once. So we're going to have you and Becky write your 3 choices on a piece of paper. And then you'll hold them up to the screen.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So other board members,
you go out
Here we go
there
with
and
the
you put your
marker.
3 right away, all
Yep.
at the same time.
okay. Oh, yeah, I thought we were writing them up there. Okay, that's fine. Okay, and each one goes to a different person for this round, right? We're not doing, you can put all 3 on one.
Yes, you can.
Oh,
put,
we can put all
you
3
can
on
put
one.
all
Okay.
3, but you can't, from now on, pencils down. You can't change it as you hear other people, okay?
I'm
That's,
confused. It's like, okay, are we putting 3 marks against a number and then we're gonna tally each position? Is that what you're saying?
okay. Let me be clear, because I wasn't clear at the first time. The way we have done this before, it's a decision-making protocol that you use. And the decision-making protocol says you have 3 votes. You can vote for those 3 candidates. You can give one person all 3. You can give 1 vote to 3 different candidates. When we call your name, you're going to say where you want your 3. So Dave, you're going to be first, and you're going to say, I want A, R, and T. Or you're going to say, I want 3 of my votes to go all to A. Okay? That's the way the process will go. Then we go to the next person. Are you writing them down instead now?
I mean, what was that? Am I supposed to just verbally give it to you now? Is that what you're saying? Oh.
You can't see it.
Am I holding it up in the right
2
spot?
for F and 1 R.
2 for F, 1 for R.
Did you get that? 2 F and 1 R.
Two for G, 1 for A.
Becky?
Becky has 2 for G and 1 for A. Right, thank you.
Okay, and the rest.
Wait, for Becky, it was 2 for G and 1 for A. Oh, I know.
Stephanie voted 1 for F, 1 for G, and 1 for R. Yeah, she's writing it up there.
Lisa put all 3 of hers on F.
No.
And And Brian Davis put all 3 of his on R.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
2 for H and 1 for G.
Well, I don't have H on
H isn't a-
H isn't on there. H is already going forward.
here.
Okay, let me move out of the way. 'Cause it looks like you tried to- Okay,
Kelsey had
one for G.
1 for A.
And one for T, and I'll take 1 for F.
Say that again, Dave.
So
Dave had 1 for F, 1 for G, and 1 for T.
Okay.
And then mine was 1 for A, 1 for F, and 1 for T.
yeah, so it looks like 1, 2, 3. So process is that now we would have discussion about those 3. It looks like this is clearly in the pool. And you can have discussion around these 2. And then maybe even talk about taking those off the table.
All right, so if you couldn't see what we were talking about, F seems to be clearly in. And then we can have discussion about R and G, and then T and A are the lowest there. So at this point, we can open it up for discussion.
So Sandy, do we?
Okay,
Unmuting. So Sandy, do we then, is F now moved on and we're discussing the other 4? Is that my understanding? Is that where we are now because F was so overwhelming that we just now discuss the other 4 and F is just now part of the other 2? Am I close?
Okay, typically you can have a discussion about all of them, but oftentimes the reason you do this is
We're not getting Sandy on the phone.
Oh, you're muted. That's right.
Oh, okay. No, now it says mute.
No, you're fine.
No, we
Okay.
can. You're fine.
Okay, I'm fine. All right, so the purpose for doing this process is to make your thinking visual. So we want to take some off the table and we want to move some into the category that we are going to be considering for that first round interview. Typically, if there's a clear front runner, which there is with F, usually you reach consensus and say, yes, let's put them in the pool. If there are clear people that do not have enough votes, you can certainly have another conversation about it. But you might want to start with the conversation about, do we take these 2 off? Do we take the one that rises to the top of these numbers and move them forward? Let's start with that first and then have a conversation about the other 2 that remain.
I guess my thought is the one that has the F that has the biggest number, we move that forward. And at this hour, I would say, unless there's an overwhelming desire, the 2 that have the low number, I would take them out unless there's a strong reason to hold them in the positions and revote.
Well, so if we take both of them out, then we will be left with 5 candidates.
Right.
So if we want to go down to 5, we can. We can move the 3 with the highest forward. I mean, not only were they highest with number, but they did have the most individual school board members putting some sort of tally in those boxes with 3. So F had 5 different school board members putting tallies in there. G and R had 3, and then T and A had 2. And so we can have discussion about T and A and see if we would like to discuss those more. see if we do want to bring one of them forward over another.
Another thing you could do is if you are comfortable with the E, H, M, F, and A's not in there. Oh, I'm sorry. H, M, F, G, and R. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What you could do again is vote for one of the last two remaining. And that should decide it after you have your conversation about, you know, do you want to add? I think you've talked about both of them, but if you have more to say about either one of them, you can have that conversation and then take another.
I think 6 has always been our number for candidates. So I think it makes sense to discuss A and T and see how, or just do a number for A and T again. I think, like I said, 6 has kind of been our consensus this entire time. If we go down to 5, I'm fine with that too, but.
Yeah, I think given how strong of a candidate pool we had, I don't think there's any reason not to go with 6. I mean, we're bringing strong candidates in, so I like the idea. Why don't we have a discussion and we'll take a vote between A and T to see which one we would prefer in the final. Okay.
So just to be clear then, at this, the proposal at this point is that, I want to make sure I'm looking at the right table, that F, G, R, H, and M are in the candidate pool, and the final vote is on A versus T.
Yeah. Yes, I would say looking at the years of experience, and then look at T and A and see what people think.
Yeah, I would like to not just look at years of experience, but kind of what that experience was. I know that applicant A, and this is hard for me, actually, both of these were in my top tier. So A had experience working, you know, with some different mental health initiatives. T has had experience, you know, working closely with city government. And so they have some pretty different experiences as well that can set them apart. So more than just years of experience, it's what that experience is.
Nobody's here muted.
Are we just going over A and T right now?
Yes.
Okay.
From what I've
So
heard,
I'd like to kind of hear all the board members' thoughts on this. All right, so Dave, what do you think? I mean, you were kind of a late change with A, so what is your thinking between A and T?
Get some reviewing and thinking about it a little bit. And also talking about experience, contact with other government agencies, involvement. I guess I would still go with T. T is
Yeah. I wasn't even thinking we would necessarily vote right now, but I mean, we can. just what your thought is, but I think all voting at the same time is good. So we don't feel that pressure. And then you don't know if you were the swing vote. All right, so Brian, what are you thinking?
This is a tough one. The experience of the two candidates is different. They have different strengths and frankly, different levels of experience. So I'm still a little bit torn. I know I'm gonna have to decide on one or the other now. I'd have to say if I had to choose right now, I'd probably take A.
Sure, yeah. Stephanie, what are you thinking?
I think candidate A has a strong philosophy. Excuse me. They're diversity and equity driven and community focused. They have the experience that I was looking for when reviewing candidates. Both A and T their resumes are completely different. So if I would have to pick, I would say A.
Huh? Okay. Okay. No, I know. Lisa, what are you thinking?
When I look not just at the candidate's resume, but at the areas of expertise our district was interested in finding, budget, finance, collaborative leadership, curriculum development, reform. Well, I think these are both I'm not sure either one aligns well, in my estimation, with the interests of the districts. So I find it difficult to support either candidate based on what I've seen. Yes.
Okay, so Lisa's abstaining. Scott, what do you think?
Yeah, these two, again, out of the candidates that we are considering at this point, I guess I am swayed by our friends at MSBA and their recommendation. So if I had to choose one of them, I would choose A, again, based on the MSBA recommendation to pull in.
Okay, Becky.
So I think they're both strong candidates. One had 5, one had 4.5 stars on my sheets. They're both different in unique ways. Again, Scott just took the words right out of my mouth. If going off MSBA's recommendation, I would vote for A.
I saved my vote for last in case I had to break a tie. So I will also, what? You abstained. You abstained. Yep. Yeah. So I just wanted to have to be the one to do that. Should it come to a tie, but it will not come to a tie. So I think in Scott's discussion, I was going back and forth, but I will lean on MSBA's recommendation to go with A as well.
take myself off mute. Brian and Stephanie, remind me what your leanings were. Or if you haven't given
They
your
both
leanings.
said A.
They both said A. Thank you.
Both today.
This up already, huh?
There you go.
How am I doing now? Okay, even though we use this process to determine who is coming to the pool, now that you've landed on the 6, they're all equal. So you'll never say, you know, who was, you know, clearly a front runner or that kind of a thing. They're all equal in the pool, okay? So now I guess we need a motion. You have 6, right?
Could someone, could someone, sorry, let me know the alphabet
Right.
numbers?
So to repeat the alphabet numbers, we have A, F, G, R, H, and M. Does that seem right?
Yes.
Okay.
I can't find you. Here,
How can we take the chart down?
Oh, yep.
Then I will read the names of those 6. I'm not going to read the names of the 6 until you have approved that in your motion. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, so who's going to do that?
If someone is speaking, we can't hear them.
Sorry. Barb is going to give a motion to someone to make, and we're going to do a roll call vote. Once the vote is made and we take that action, then we'll release the names.
All right.
Okay. So Dave is making the motion.
Okay. I move to extend an offer for the first round interviews for District 200 Superintendency to the following candidates: A, F, G, R, H, and M.
I second that motion.
And do we have any discussion? All right, at this point, we're going to take a roll call vote. If you can do that, Stephanie.
It took me a minute to hit the mute button. So, or unmute me. Back to discussion. As I've said previously, there is a couple candidates that we've extended an offer to, and I appreciate the process and I'm fine with it, that I'm going to find very, very difficult to support. Call me near the end. I'm going to have to decide about supporting the motion.
Not a problem, Lisa. Becky Beisel,
Yes.
Dave Pemble,
Yes.
Scott Gergen,
Yes.
Brian Davis,
Yes.
Stephanie Malm, yes. Lisa Hedin. I'm going to ask Kelsey first.
Yes.
Kelsey Waits,
Yes. Myself. Motion carries. All right, so we have our 6 candidates. So at this point, okay,
If I read the wrong name, I'll never forget.
yeah. Yep, Barb is just ensuring that she has the right names so she doesn't read the wrong names out, because that would be terrible.
Yes. Take your time, Barb.
Sandy, would you come look at this just to be sure? Or do you want to- Okay.
They are in particular order. The names are not going to be in the same order in which the motion was made. Can't type candidates to letters. Sam? Should I just shout? Okay. Kelsey's. Oh, gosh.
You can hang out with Becky too if you want.
My mic doesn't work, so
Okay.
I can't hang out with Becky.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right.
All right.
The six
The six
candidates you are
candidates
sending
you
an
are
offer to
sending
for
an offer
first
to
round
for first round
interviews are.
Hold on. Yes, Barb and Kelsey are both unmuted. So Barb, if you're going to be doing it at, if you're going to be using Kelsey's, then just mute your computer.
Okay, how's that?
That'll be better. You know, if we can't get this to work, then Barb, you're going to have to, you're going to have to do an interpretive dance so that we can figure out who the candidates are.
We're violating social distancing right now a little. Yeah, so if we can repeat the.
All right. You can hear me now with no interference.
Sure can, perfectly.
All right. I'll also let you know as soon as the meeting is adjourned tonight, Sandy and I will contact these 6 individuals and confirm that they're available Monday or Tuesday for interviews and slot them into those times. If any of those candidates, for whatever reason, this evening decline your invitation, we will let you know immediately, and you will then be able to fill that slot if you'd like another candidate.
How soon will we have these
All right,
put
in
on
no
the
particular
website?
order, your candidates are Sarah Paul, Jeff Riddle Hoover, Robert McDowell, Jeff Pesta, Mark Zuzik, and Rev Hillstrom.
Okay, so Scott had a question about how soon will we have these up on our website?
I checked with my phone died. Okay, so I checked with Deanna and I'm sending her the message right now, and so she was hoping to have it up tonight.
Did you hear that?
That's a fantastic answer. I love that answer.
We're here to make you happy, Scott.
I like it. I'm even going to give you a thumbs up.
Oh, nice. Well, you got the tricks.
Woo!
Except by the time it hits the paper, we'll already have it down to 3.
We'll already have
didn't know you could do that.
Yes. So at this point, do we have anything else that we should be going over tonight? Otherwise, we're looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Meeting adjourned.